was born in Minneapolis, and I ended up in Chicago at 2 weeks old. And I was adopted. And so I lived with the two most wonderful parents in the world. But at the age of 35, 38, I think with the help of my wife, MaryAnn, she kind of insisted that my adopted mother let me know who my real mother was. And if she even knew, for that matter. Well, she knew because it was her sister, which turns around to be my aunt. And of course, when that happened and I found out who my birth mother was, then my 4 cousins became my brothers and sisters. So now I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and I'm at the age of 38 or something after being an only child. So that was a big deal for me, of course. But the end of that story, as far as my immediate family is concerned, is that when I was 76 years old, 75, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we found this Mike Grassinger, who my mother had mentioned that be my aunt, my birth mother, that my birth mother had this Mike Grassinger too. So all of a sudden he entered the picture. I asked my wife to put it on Facebook because everybody goes to Facebook nowadays. So he came up from California, honest to goodness, after 40-some years living there, and decided to come back to Minneapolis area. He came back, looked on Facebook for some of his old friends, saw this, called. We invited him up to the lake, and we all sat around the table, and this is exactly what happened. I said, Michael, I don't know how to ask you this, so I'm going to ask you. I'm going to tell you that you're my brother. Well, the guy just about fell over. Now, this was a huge deal to me, but how about Mike? He has no family at all. His folks are dead, and he had no relatives, no brothers or sisters, nothing. So all of a sudden, he became part of our family, and I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and that's where I am today with five, part of my family. The end of that story, really, and we can swing into the most important thing in my life, is that I had 2 parents that I mentioned were the greatest. They were my adopted parents. And that's how we lived, and we lived very well. And all of a sudden in 9th grade, this little Irish gal came down. She came over to Ramsey Junior High School, and that was it. So I put my smooth moves on her, of course, what you do when you're 14. And I somehow figured out we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't know if she recognized that or not, but that started 60-some years ago. So now we're going to be celebrating our 60th anniversary. And so I went from my parents to the greatest lady in the world who's always run my life, I'll tell you. So I've had it pretty easy. You know, I can always fall back to Mama, or I could fall back to Mary, or whatever. So that's just kind of the story of my family. And then, of course, our family, MaryAnn and I, our family grew from there, and it was great. Better, really. They were terrific. I mean, they really were. I guess I wasn't a bad kid because I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but at the same time, my folks were, well, probably even too easy, you know? That's what I'm thinking back. They were always there for me. Here's a good one for my dad. My dad was a steel engraver, which we talked, and my dad was a blue-collar guy, and he made enough for us to live comfortably, you know, one thing and another. Well, my God, when I got into high school, I guess senior year probably, he decided to run for president of the what's the adult deal, the PTA, president of the PTA. What the hell? You're not a guy that talks to people or has meetings or does anything else. You work on a machine. And I don't think I said all that to him. I think I said that to him when he's dying. I said, Dad, I was so proud of you, and I don't think I ever really told you how proud I was of you because I just didn't understand. And he became president of the PTA. Then he ran for commissioner of the park system. And that was a local thing, but I mean, no, it was a big deal. And he ran for that, and I remember passing cards out, political things, so that he could get it. Well, he didn't get to be commissioner of the park board, but he was president of the PTA. Now, that's a big deal, important deal for me to tell you about my parents, because they were so laid back. And to think, that my dad would do something like that, and that's why I jumped to when he died. I said, Dad, I don't know if I told you how proud I was of you. And then the tears came, and I was really happy I said that to him. My dad was from Minneapolis. Because he had 4 brothers, and my grandpa, who I never met, he passed along, but he had a tailor shop down on Washington Avenue in Minneapolis, way back in the early 1900s. And there is an apartment building down there with, I would guess, 8 apartments, maybe not huge. But there's an apartment building down there. On the edifice there is Sundin building, Sundin's, and that's ours. In fact, my dad had one brother, Lloyd, who graduated from Hamlin, was very close to Hamlin University in St. Paul. He built the music hall there. I mean, the guy was really wealthy, again, through Jostens and one thing and another, but he was on the executive end, of course. My mom's family was in Minnesota, and she comes from a farm, and her maiden name was Johnson, and she had 3, Y and B. She had 2 sisters, and Leon and Jean, she had 2 brothers. Probably leaving out somebody, but that's about it on her side. And they really did grow up on the farm, And my dad met my mom, I do believe, when she worked in this candy store in Minneapolis when she was, 20-some. And that's where he met her. And, neither one of them had college educations or anything. They just were getting along. And they really had a good life, They had a terrific family, and that's what it was all about for them. Yeah, we grew up in a very, very middle-class family, maybe a little lower, blue collar. And so I remember I went through 4th grade there, by the way. And so I remember, I guess one deal was a guy by the name of Merritt. How's that? That was when I was, 4th grade. He chased me home from school. He took my sweater off, and my mother came out and just gave him hell. And of course, my dad heard about it. He said, no, you got to stand up for yourself, So the next day, I came home, and Merritt was coming down the street down the other. My dad said, you go over there and take care of Merritt. And I'll never forget that, because it was a big deal at that time. So I, of course, wasn't nervous at all, scared to death. I don't know who was larger either, by the way. Probably I was, for that matter. And so we had a little fisticuffs, And that's what I remember about my folks. They were so easygoing. But boy, when it came to me, they just took charge and made me, what I am, who I am, And that led up to and through high school, and bam, all of a sudden I signed into pro baseball, Yeah, my mom worked at a candy store for a while, and then my dad was always a steel engraver. So he did that in Chicago, then had his own business, quote. It was a little shop he had at home. And he moved in these pantograph machines and big deals into the home, and he'd make these class rings and everything. So the guy was really, really talented in his own way, because he'd make these dies that for Jostens that made all these class rings that we're all familiar with. He was the guy that designed those, So it was a big deal. In fact, his biggest deal was World War II. He made a metal, or I guess a jewelry piece, because that's where huge money, but probably like $500,000 huge metal design jewelry for Chiang Kai-shek, who came over from China to Washington, and somehow he got involved in designing this thing. And of course, the huge value was the diamonds and so forth. and the stones that went into that. But still, it was his deal, you know. So the guy was really talented. And when we went back to Minneapolis, he had this little shop in one of our bedrooms. We had two. No, we had three. I had one, my folks, and he. And so he opened that up and just did his thing and got most of his jobs from Chicago. And that's how we grew up. And he made enough money, and we always had enough, you know. Because my family, my mother's relatives, including my birth mother, you know, but she had two sisters and a couple brothers and all this family and uncles, and they were all up there in Minneapolis. So I'm sure she wanted to, but he wanted to go back too. He had a couple brothers up there, and that's kind of where they started from, because he had worked up there in Minneapolis, but that was the deal. So he joined Johnston's, and so that's how we got to Minneapolis. It was just family, and my dad was able to hook up with something till he got his own machine, you know. So that worked well. What I remember most about that time, because of the last 60 years, I've heard all these war stories and crummy things, and people who didn't like their schooling very well or didn't keep in touch with their schoolmates and so forth. I had a terrific time. I just had a wonderful time. And what I remember playing through the whole thing. I guess I was kind of smart, but the idea being, I just worked hard enough to make a C. You know, if I could get through, that's all I wanted, because I wanted to play. I wanted to play baseball or hockey or basketball or football or whatever it was going on. And, you know, I played down at this park the other way from where the junior high was and I played there. It was called Nicollet Field. It's not about all I can say. I just had a great time, had great friends, had great everything. I think the only fight I really got into was merit back in 4th grade, remember? No, but I did not have a hard time. Of course I was big too, that was another blessing, but I just played for fun. And I don't know, I just grew up that way. I went to a track meet. I must have been 12, 13, but I ran in this junior Olympics, they called it, deal. And it was over at the university. And I won everything. I mean, I ran the high jump, truly, and I ran the broad jump. I ran the sprints, the 4, everything was yards then, you know, so it was a 440, 220, 100. But I was running against all these little black fellas, and they were quick, you know. But everybody, where did big fat white guy come from, you know? When I look back, I'm proud of that, because I still have the medals. I got a ton of medals, a whole cap full, winning all that stuff, you know. So God gave me so many gifts, and I gotta say, hardly ever worked on them. They just were gifts from God. I could run fast. I grew up well. I didn't have a lot to do with growing up to be 6'5", but I did that and ended up 6'4", I guess, in high school. Grew up to 6'5", and I was about 210 in high school. So I was a big kid, and yet I was the fastest guy in the field. Now I'm popping off and everything, but that's the way it was. So I played defense and offense in football and did that for my sophomore year, and it's all city in my junior year, and then all everything in my senior year. Baseball was your favorite? Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. The sport that was in season was really my favorite. But football was really number one. And I always thought my big thing was getting out of high school and going to college. I was sought by a lot of colleges. So I thought that was the thing to do. And all of a sudden this scout comes, I'm telling you, from over the hill, from somewhere, and wants me to fly to Baltimore and work out with the Orioles. And this is it is in July of our graduation year, 55. And my folks allowed it, and I did then fly to Baltimore. And I'm 17 years old, and I fly to Baltimore, first flight ever for me, and I get off, and I'm supposed to take a cab to the Southern Hotel, which back then was a big deal, you know, with all the white gloves and all that stuff there. I never took a cab before. I didn't I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. So I go out and I call down the cab like I know what I'm doing. And I take this cab and they go to the hotel and check in. Everything's ready for me. Everything's cool. And then for some reason, I go out. I remember there was a cute story there, for lack of a better word. I didn't know where to eat. And of course, you don't eat in a family dining room, with the tuxedos and everything. And they didn't have those little grill rooms back then. So I went outside, and down at the block or so, there was a little trailer. One of those caboose things they made cafes out of, or little. And so went down there. I'll never forget that either. And they had great chili dogs. So I'd get a chili dog for whatever, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whenever I was around. And then, of course, it was good when I went to the club because the clubhouse had sandwiches in it. And that was a good deal. And so I worked out, and they had about, I don't know, 12, 20 guys working out, and I was we all dressed in the other locker room, visitors' locker room. And danged if I wasn't brought over about 2 or 3 days, and I truly am telling you, I don't have any idea what's going on. They brought me in the main locker room. So now I am with all these big league guys, and I got my own uniform, my own everything. They're shining my shoes. They're doing all the stuff they do for the players, And I'm working out. And I don't know, there's a great ending to this story, really. I think it is. So I'm working out, and it's terrific. It's a big deal. Oh, and then part of that, till I get to the end, is I told Mr. Richards, the manager and general manager, I said, "Sir, I'm running out of money. I've taken the cab to and from, and I got to eat." And oh my God, he just raised hell. And he called the secretary in, and one thing and another. Well, then they gave me a couple $100 spending money, but then they said, "No, listen, son, you're not supposed to go out and eat. You just sign up, sign everything you can in in the restaurant there. That's that fancy joint I told you about." I said, "Wow. Okay," so I would guess about one meal is all it took me to get comfortable with that. And so, I'm talking about shrimp cocktail and lobster and steak and whatever. I was ordering everything on the deal. Breakfast was huge, the whole thing, and just signing my name, hello. And then, that went terrific. And I went till the very end. It was a great thing. I had plenty to eat. And the cabs, of course, I had my expense money. So that was all covered. So I thought this was a great deal. But then, I think it was a Friday or a Saturday. By God, I looked down, it was July 3rd, 2nd or 3rd. And my mom's birthday was the 4th. And we always had a big family picnic and softball game, all this family stuff people do on my mom's birthday on July 4th. So I thought, oh man, I got to get home. I did. I've been there about 2 weeks. So I write a nice letter, as far as I remember. It was a very nice letter. "Dear Mr. Richards, thank you for everything that you've given me and provided. And I certainly hope we can, do this again," or whatever the heck. I don't know what I said, but I was a 17-year-old kid, and I said what you'd say. And so I took the envelope and I took the cab, and I went to the ballpark. Nobody was there. So I went in the locker room and into the general manager's room, which probably was wrong. You never do that. But I went in there and I put that on his desk, took the plane home. Probably the best thing I ever did, and I don't know anything about negotiation, but all of a sudden then, about a week later, or a week later, we get this call from Paul Richards and then a letter, but he wanted me and my parents to come down to Chicago where they were playing the White Sox. And they wanted to meet with me there, and my parents. So this was huge. My mom, I'm telling you, we were blue-collar people, just getting along, a lot of meatloaf, that kind of. So we took a plane, of course, and went to Chicago, stayed at the Hilton overlooking Michigan. And my folks, this is what they couldn't get over. They had a room, and I had a room. We had separate rooms overlooking Lake Michigan. And theirs was like a mini suite or something, you know, it had extra. And they were blown away by that, of course, and of course so was I. Everything was. So there we are at the Hilton, and then we go to the game and get our passes and watch the game. And then the next day, I don't even think it was morning, but the next day we're upstairs in the morning meeting with Richards and the other guys. Jack Dunn there was from the secretary and so forth. And they're giving me more stuff to think about. You know, they want to sign me. And I never entered my mind to sign in the pro ball. If actually, I'm telling you right now, what I remember and always remembered is that I was going into football and playing baseball if I could, you know, in school. But came back and going back to Minneapolis with my parents, they were like this through my whole 17 years at that time. You know, whatever you wanted, what do you want to do, son? Man, I don't know. You know, this is a pretty good life. I play ball for a living. You know, geez, I never thought of that. I play ball for a living and do what I'm doing. They set up a deal for me over 5 years, which was a lot of money. I'll leave it that way. But it was a big pile of money. I decided, well, let's do this. Let's sign. I mean, this is fun. I like to play baseball. You know, what's the bad part? So I signed, and then what I didn't know on the side was that, and then the scout came over with a brown paper bag. I kid you not, because I saw this. And he had 10 grand and 10,000 in this brown paper bag. And he gave that to my folks as just kind of an extra bonus when I signed. So then, which was now illegal, you know, and all this stuff, of course, but it was all taken care of and gone with the wind about 3-4 years later when the federal agents from Washington approached me because I was a little fish in a big storm about getting bonuses that weren't paid for and so forth. So that's another little story, but I didn't know what was coming or going, and I had no idea to sign into baseball. This is from the giddy up. And I just played, and then I was in Minneapolis planning on going to probably the U of M, I don't know, but I was going to play football. And then we went to Chicago, like I mentioned. It was just a quick thing. It's like a blur. And then all of a sudden, 1956 rolled around. But I'm still 17, okay? I get to be 18 in October. But in 1956, my wife, who was my girlfriend, she was over in Europe in the Olympic team and world team, figure skating. I mean, that's a huge deal. Okay, so now I'm in Baltimore, and I'm in Baltimore, well, just, oh, I know. The start of that is 56. I came, I won 2 games in b-ball in 55 when I first signed. I signed with Brooks Robinson, who was just dropping a name, so, you know, everybody know, oh, you played with Brooksy. But no, we went to York, and then we came back to Baltimore. And that was, Paul Richards came into the locker room, and boy, were we, you know, something. We were in the big locker room, putting on the uniform for the game. And, you know, everything was set, like I mentioned, the shoes and the sanitaries, everything. So anyways, we're all set. Richards comes out and says, "You boys ready?" I said, "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir." Well, he says, "Brooksy, you can go, Brooksy, you start at third." And, "Oh, yes, sir, thank you." He didn't know what to say, the guy from Little Rock. And so he started at third base, and he took the starting card, the list, and he scratched out the third baseman he had to play, who was a regular third baseman. It was George Kell, who was another Hall of Fame guy. So he scratched out George Kell, Hall of Fame, and put in Brooks Robinson. Now that's quite a deal, really. And then he said, "Gordy, you go out in the bullpen. We'll see if we can't use you." So man, I'm running out there, and they can't use me. They're not using me that day. So I'm out there, and I do remember I asked the guys, "Yeah, you can do that." So I'd order hot dogs. I had a couple hot dogs, and I was saying hi to the girls out there and everything. I was having a hell of a good time, you know. And I did not get in the game. And then the bad news is, so I had kind of a bad news career. The bad news is when I was throwing, I threw my arm out, and they call it today, there's all kinds of them, like 30, 40 Tommy John operations, which they scope and they fix the ulnar nerve. And it just seems to be a rash of those. Well, back then I had the ulnar nerve go out, and what happens is you lose a feeling, you know. And so the really bad news there is I had to open my mouth and tell them I was so okay, well, you go home and rest. So then I went to spring training in Scottsdale, Arizona with them, and I was throwing, and then again I opened my mouth and said, well, my arm is kind of, I can't feel my hand when I throw hard. So they sent me back to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And, well, the doctor looked at it and he says, well, it's the ulnar nerve and that we have to do this. And I had no clue. And my folks, God love them, this is going, you know, they didn't know what to say or what to do. And they what do you think, Gordy? You know, I'm 17 years old, hello. So I said, well, I guess we got to operate. So they operated. MaryAnn was over in Europe, my girlfriend, and she was over there skating, and she came home to skate in the Nationals out east in Philadelphia. And she even took the train. I mean, she was supposed to skate an exhibition in Washington going through Baltimore. So here she comes into the hospital. I mean, talk about a God thing again, because, you know, there she is holding my hand. And I had just been cut on, you know, the day before. So it was unbelievable. So when I had that operation, I took the train to Philadelphia, watched her skate, and then went back to Minneapolis for a month or so, and then rejoined Baltimore. So that's where the story goes. That's so huge. I mean, so big, and people, oh my God, you played for Baltimore. Well, I did and I didn't. I was there all 56, and I was on the DL. And so I was on that, and I would be batting practice pitcher, and I would be this and that, everything else, probably a glorified ball boy for that matter. But I was with them all year. I traveled with them. I lived like a big leaguer, but in my mind, I was not. I wasn't doing anything on the field. So that was the end of 56, except for Detroit. We were in Detroit playing, and they sent me into the game. And I pitched to one guy, I think it was Harvey Keene, and just to drop big names, but true, this was Detroit. Harvey Keene was leading off, and I pitched to him and walked him. And God almighty, now I'm really nervous, and I'm aiming the ball, doing things you shouldn't do. And so the next guy up was probably Charlie Maxwell, and I walked him. So now I've walked two. I've been sitting on my butt all year, haven't done a thing in a game. I walked two, and out comes Lum Harris, our coach, and he said, son, we're going to take you out. I said, no, Lumen, for God's sake, let me take care of K-line. I'll never forget this line. Let me take care of K-line. He said, that's what we're afraid of, son. He asked for the ball. So that was the K-line. So anyways, he took me out of the game. I faced two guys, walked them. The guy that relieved me, they got a single off of and a run scored. Okay, so now what all that adds up to in my whole career is that I have a run charged against me, and that means my ERA is like in infinity. I've never gotten anybody out. I just walked two people. And, you know, but I'm a big leaguer, hello. So I'm still getting cards to jump around a little bit. I'm still getting cards every week asking for my autograph and sending pictures. I even get balls sent to me, things that are costly for autographs and so forth and so on. Boy, you go in a restaurant, they find out you're a ball player nowadays. You know, I guess they think I have 3 more zeros on my contract than I had. But whatever the case, their impression, they make it a big deal. It really wasn't. And 56, I didn't play then. 57 was really a lost year. I was with Baltimore in spring training. Then they sent me to Vancouver in the Pacific Coast League, which is AAA. And I did not play well, and my arm was not good. And so I think I probably either had a losing record or no record. probably threw 40 or 50 innings is all. And then that was 57. And then 58 rolled around, went to spring training with Baltimore, and I was throwing better, much better. Of course, back then they have no rehab. They have no nothing. You don't work out or train. They just left me alone, and when I was living out in Arizona or whatever, I just ran or did whatever I wanted to do. In 58, I started throwing well. In spring training, they were really impressed. And so I was told, go to Vancouver, get a couple of games under you, and we'll bring you back. And I was happy with that. I wanted to get a couple of games. And so that all worked out. Well, I got back to Vancouver, and I remember I lost a game or two, but I always was throwing well, giving up 2 or 3 runs. So all of a sudden I was 6-2 in July, 6 wins, 2 losses, and I still have the clipping. God bless my mother. They ordered the paper so she could cut out the clippings. And so every week she'd cut out the clipping of who was leading what, But this is a pretty big deal because AAA, Coast League, and I was leading the league in July with a 2.3 or some damn thing, which isn't important, but it was low. And I was leading the league, and I did throw really well. Well, don't you know, my arm went bad. And we were in Seattle, went really bad. I couldn't even finish the inning. And I came back to the dugout, and the manager was yelling at me, and we got into it. I mean, really got into it, and they broke it up. And the next thing I know, they sent me, this is kind of what's fun about the pro baseball. They sent me from Vancouver to Knoxville, Tennessee. Now look at your map, you're gonna see that's about the farthest place you can go from Vancouver to Knoxville, across the whole world. So I go to Knoxville, was a manager I knew who I had played for before, and a great guy, Staller. And I threw a couple games there and won. I think I was like 3-1, but I didn't get there right away. And the fun story there is I had a wife and I had a baby who was 3 months old. Hello. MaryAnn had the baby up in Vancouver in April, May. So anyways, she had this little baby, so we had to fly her home. So we flew her to Minneapolis. And at the time, we had bought a house in Phoenix the year before, so we were living there. But this just made a lot of sense to fly Mary back to the family with the little baby. And so we did that. And then I had a friend come up from Minneapolis, flew up, and drove with me from there, Vancouver to Phoenix. We unloaded the car and did all what we do. Then we went, of course, through Vegas and Reno, and then we drove back to Minneapolis, left the car, got in the plane, flew to Knoxville, and the paper there in Knoxville had a headline, "Sundin arrives via wagon train." They really crucified me, which they should have, But I really didn't. I think it was not a good thing that they sent me all the way over there. So the ball club didn't do anything. Baltimore didn't say anything. And that was that. But 58, you see, was just a few months. But I had a good arm, and I threw well. And all I can say is I had some success with AAA. And then that was 58. 59, I know they sent me to San Antonio, but I was only there a few weeks. My arm was bad again. And what happened was, quick story, is that I ended up with chips and a spur in my elbow again. So they sent me back to Baltimore, and I went back to the same place I was and had the operation. And back then, like now, they sculpt, of course, but they start working you out. I mean, they tape you up and that's it. Then they casted you. And so you had it's a big part of the story because you have adhesions and all that stuff growing up for the rest of the season. You got to break it down. That was not pretty and not good. So that took care of 59 in a hurry. And 60, I was done. 61, I came back. I wasn't playing well. I went to Vancouver right away, but then I came back to Washington in A-ball. They had A-ball in Washington. And a buddy was managing there, and Billy DeMars, and I told Billy I just can't do it, pal. You know, I can't even swing the bat, let alone throw the ball. So he got me my release. And so that's pretty sudden, but what it is it's only a few years, and it's literally 1 year I threw with a good arm. So I'm saying, you know, boo-hoo, but I guess I did show I could throw with the big kids. And that's the extent of my baseball, really. Like 61, I came back and we moved back to Minneapolis. Cindy was born up in Vancouver, and which I'd mentioned. So I was on the road. It isn't like today when you get days off or weeks off or whatever to take care of the baby or what. So no way, you know. So my wife's expecting, and I'm on the road, and we were in San Diego. Went from Sacramento, San Diego, and so I'm in the dugout. Wasn't pitching that day, but this is when I was pitching well in 1958, okay? So, you know, everything was cool, everything's good. And so I'm in the dugout, and over the loudspeaker at the stadium there in San Diego, congratulations to Gordy Sundin, right-handed pitcher with the Vancouver team. His wife just gave birth to a baby girl. And I could jump up, I don't know if I hit my head on a dugout or not, but oh my God, you know, so I go running out of the dugout, run down the runway there, you go out to the locker room, run out, run into the hallway there where the concessions are and everything. People are looking at me and the sparks are flying from my spikes, you know, because I'm running. And I'm running up to where I can take the elevator up to the broadcast place. And I get up there and they got one of our wives on the phone there, who was she wasn't with MaryAnn, but she just called to tell her everything's fine. So I talked to Penny, the wife, and everything was great. So that's how I heard about my first baby born. It really is a big story for me, you know, that all this went about. So everything went well, came back, and this is a God thing. I'll tell you, the end of this story is either the next day or the day, no, it'd be a couple of days in the hospital. So probably 2 days later, I'm starting a game in San Diego. And I asked the manager if I can take off because MaryAnn's coming home. And I wanted to take her home from the hospital. He said, no, you can't because we got a doubleheader tomorrow. And so this is probably Saturday. We got a doubleheader and I don't think we can let you go. You know, we might need you if you don't pitch much. You don't go the distance or whatever the heck back then. So I said, oh, okay. So I packed my bag, of course. I get everything ready. I got my ticket. And I go to the clubhouse and I hide my bag, a suitcase, in the trainer's room. And I get the clubhouse guy, tell him, listen, I might be out of here and as quick as I can, but I need a ride. And he says, oh, I'll take you in my pickup, you know. And I explained to him what's going on. So he says, oh, I can get you there. So I said, okay. But now, the story is I got to pitch in a couple hours or something because the plane leaves in like 3 hours or something like that. And so there was a time constraint. And then on top of that, I had to pitch. I mean, I had to pitch well or it wasn't going to work. You know, I'd be out of there and couldn't go. So I pitched 9 innings. So we win 1 or 2 to nothing, swear to the Lord. I mean, one of the better games I pitched. So I shut him out, ran in the clubhouse, didn't shower or anything, told the clubby, went into the manager's room, said, Skip, can I go, man? I threw the 9 innings, I ain't gonna pitch tomorrow. He says, yeah, get the hell out of here. So I said, oh, okay. So I grabbed my bag, which, you know, he swore at me about that one. I had him right in the trainer's room. Truth, but this is all the end of the story. So I flew home. The day before, I had a chance to go down to this jewelry store, and I bought MaryAnn a really neat watch. So I had that in my pocket. And not part of the story, except I flew home. I made it to Seattle, got on a plane, and made it to Vancouver. And then the next morning, I guess I flew all night, of course. And then the next morning, I'm up, or I never did go to bed, and I go down to the hospital. Well, MaryAnn had to listen to the game in the ward and down there and up there in Canada, that's like, you ever hear of the English patient or something like that? They have these big wards for people, that's what they got up there. So she was in there with like 10 other women or something, and they were all listening to the game on the radio. So they heard the whole game, and so the nurse goes back and says, Mrs. Sundin, your husband's here. And she says, no, he isn't, he's in San Diego, So she didn't even want to see me, no. So the nurse goes out to me. I don't know what the interchange was, but the nurse comes back and she says, Mr. Sundin, she doesn't want to see you. She thinks you're in San Diego. She doesn't know either what the hell's going on. So I said, no, I was, but I made it back. So she let me come in, or I think MaryAnn even snuck out the hallway, So there I was. And so she brought me down to the baby. And as I recall, because she's always held this above me, behind me, again me, is that she says, well, the first thing you said was she's awful small, isn't she? But now I'm, this is 58, so I am 21. Hello, I'm getting old now. But I wasn't, I was 20. And so that's how our first one was born. And I was able to take MaryAnn home that afternoon, of course. And the end of a really great story, and one of those games I pitched really well, So that was the end of that great one. But I have another one, too, that I got to tell you about Terry. That's our middle daughter. We were living in Phoenix, and we were living in a new community just built in by John F. Long. So we bought a new house there, and it was built during the season when we were playing ball. And we moved in, and then MaryAnn was pregnant. Oh, and then she was serving a turkey dinner for my birthday, and she had her folks over, her parents were down there, and so forth. And she's serving the turkey, and she's serving the gravy, and she's having labor pains. Hello. So I don't know if we finished the dinner, I doubt it. So that was that on my birthday. She was having the turkey dinner, so we run her to the hospital. Sure enough, so she delivers Terry. Now, in the meantime, this is a brand new hospital. And, hardly anything, I guess, is the way it should be. So I'm just following her around and trying to stay loose. And she goes into the delivery room, and of course I follow her right in. There's no one told me not to. So I follow her into the delivery room, and right away they got her legs in stirrups and things like that I don't like, because of course the doctor, was a male. I don't want him looking in there, and all that stuff. But anyways, he was. And so she started delivering, and I was getting woozy. I was in there, all 6'5", 220 of me, I'm getting woozy. And so, but on top of it, Terry came out, what they call breech. Her butt came out. So we knew who she was, of course. It was a daughter, a girl. And they delivered her, and everything was fine. And then MaryAnn said, take care of Gordy, because I was ready to go down. I really was. I can remember that part pretty dang good. I was, things were going around, and it's not pretty, I'll tell you that, not pretty at all. So I think my story is that 2 nurses helped me out, and 1 helped her. So it was kind of an ass back 180 thing, but it was great. So because everything turned out well, and that's where our middle daughter was born, and but it turned out to be kind of funny. And of course, then I went and bought everybody drinks because I owned a bar. The only thing that a guy should do when he's, when he's 20 years old and he drinks a lot, you should buy a bar, right? So I bought a bar in Phoenix. And I had that. Well, that's kind of a side to the issue, but but I went and bought everybody a beer or a drink, and that was that. That's how our middle daughter was born. And then we came back to Minneapolis, and we had the 2 girls. And just to finish off the girls, because we actually had a 3rd one, and she hung in there, But anyway, no, she's really close to us right now, and she has stayed so close to us. And that's Corey. So we had Corey in Minneapolis. So the 3 different places. I had 3 daughters, sure wanted a boy. I wanted Sam Sundin. That would have been a great linebacker, right? Something like that. But I didn't get the boy. I got a black lab by the name of Sam. So that was it. But anyway, I have the 3 daughters that MaryAnn gave me. And that started a whole other thing, because now I got girls, hello, but they took care of me. And they have taken care of me the last few years. And they've always been there for us. And we've never had any, did he say never? Yes, I did. We never had any really bad experiences with any of them. I'm talking about all 3. You know, Terry went to school at the University of Duluth, Minnesota, and graduated. Corey did not. Cindy did not graduate. But they all had their own lives. They all led their own lives. They all took care of themselves, probably more than both their mother and I would have liked. But they were an independent group, which we gave them, you know, independent kids. It was great. I have such few negative things, you know. But the thing that wasn't pretty was that I couldn't accept my failure, and I still think of it as a failure, that I didn't do anything in baseball or football or basketball or anything. You know, God gave me, I've said this 100 times, but he gave me all these gifts, and it didn't turn out. And I have always taken responsibility for that. And so I just started drinking. That was a good way to take care of that. So when we got to Minneapolis, first job was Campbell's Soup. And I worked there as a salesman, and then I got another job. Oh, I know, I got another job as a liquor salesman. That's a good idea, isn't it? Particularly right now when I'm like 22 years old or something. But I lived a lifetime already, right? So, yeah, that was another job I had. And then I got into real estate, into townhouses and so forth, selling those. And even the kids helped me there, both Cindy and Corey, and of course Terry was up in school. But no, our daughters never gave us any problems, and we had a great time. I think we did. Growing up, we bought a cabin up north Minneapolis, a couple hours away, and we had this cabin for all of us to enjoy, particularly the girls. They went skiing all the time and had their friends, and there are a lot of sweet memories when we were younger, like that. Oh, I have a lot of things actually that I couldn't that embarrassed me about Corey, but no, I tell you what the funny part is she did her own thing. She was a cheerleader. She was this. She was that. Then she got into modeling, and I guess that was a problem for her because she lost a lot of weight. You know, one of those deals, you got to get down to 65 pounds or some stupid thing. But that didn't go well with her. And so it presented some family problems, but not a lot, except that we got to get her healthy again. I think we did get her healthy again before she went to Florida to go down there for Fort Lauderdale to model. Yeah, and then she went up to Boston. She was going to open up a sporting goods store for this guy out of Minneapolis who made a ton of stores and did a big job. But then they ended up not opening a store in Boston. So now she's up there working for, and tells you Corey's, you know, what she did and how she did it. She ended up working for one of the most prestigious accounting firms in the country, let alone Boston, you know, on like the 29th floor or some friggin' thing. And so she did that. I don't know how she got up there, I don't know how, but she had a friend who had a friend, I guess, one of those deals. So she came back to Florida and found a guy, and that guy she married. So she found a guy in Boston, and then that was that. And so she just did her own thing, but all the gals did. Cindy, our oldest, she got out of school right away, went into the work program. And she was a secretary and a very capable gal, and she always ran her own life, had her own apartment, and did all her own thing. And she had 2 kids, up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. She stayed up there. And she had a boy and a gal, and they're very successful kids. The gal is like 26 now, I think, something like that, and the boy is like 20, 21. And so they're doing well, though. And that's her family. Now, Corey's got a great family. And would you believe it? The kids have kids. And she's probably the prettiest grandmother you've seen around. But the fact of the matter, she's going to be a grandmother for the second time. Hello. So she was just funny, but she wasn't bad in a bad way. She was funny in a funny way, you know. No, she led a good life. And Cindy did with her own independent ways. And Terry, of course, well, she went to university. She got a guy that's very successful. I mean, huge successful. They have a huge home in Vail, Colorado, and they have a large home in Minneapolis. They're very, very successful. And God, they just went to the World Tournament for soccer as an example of their lifestyle. We just have a family that just kept going around us. And I take credit, by the way. I do take credit for about 8%. I cannot take more than 8%, but I got in there. I did. And the rest is all MaryAnn. She did it all. Probably the biggest thing that stands out there, just like everybody has the cutest kids in the world, but there were 3 beautiful little girls, and my mom, my mother, used to make dresses for them. And man, they were just, you know, so when Easter rolled around, they go to church, or even, I guess, even Halloween, whatever, but any kind of a holiday, they'd have these little dresses on, you know. So that would probably be my number one memory of the kids and going to church with them when we did. And it was terrific in that respect. And then the girls, they got along pretty well. The 2 oldest ones kind of clashed a little bit, but we made another bedroom for our middle daughter, Terry. And then she had her own, you know, her own area, her own space. And that went well, and that went much better. And so I guess they were sisters the way sisters are sisters, you know. It's not all sweet, but it went fine. And I mentioned Terry. You know, I didn't say anything about her family because I was talking about, you know, what their lifestyle is, which is not important at all. But what is important is her family. She has 2 boys and a girl, and her girl right now is in Williams College, and she's over in New Zealand now. I mean, this is a whole other life. Skiing. She's quite a skier. Obviously, she's on the Williams ski team. And so she's in her 2nd year now of college. And Megan, her name is, she's done terrific. And then Josh is as good a looking kid as you can imagine. Just think of a good looking kid that's sophomore and can play any sport. Plays soccer. They won a game 3-2 in the playoffs. He scored all 3 goals. He was that good. He plays hockey. He's just a little guy. You know, I don't know, my size or wherever, didn't get through. But he still is playing hockey with the seniors, you know, the varsity and so forth. So that's her boy. And then her other son, his name is Chadwick, which I always got a bang out of that, but I guess that's what you call your kids when they're going out to the Eastern colleges, you know. Hello. So, but they brought him with the counselors and the one thing and another. They've taken care of the kid. And now he's working as a cashier in his 2nd year out of high school. He's doing fine, you know, yeah, 2nd or 3rd. He's getting in some college, gets a few hours, whatever, a week, I think. And he's just doing wonderful. So when I save him for last, is because we're most proud of him. I mean, Chad is just doing a great job, and he's a sweet kid, and he's a big kid, you know, he's growing up now. But he's overcome a lot of stuff. And Terry has hung in there, because that's what it takes, you know. He had to have her attention, which she gave him. So that's the family there, but Chad's the one that really had a tough time, and he's making it through, you know, in good shape. The girls, I don't know, did their own thing, and what do dads know about girls? I don't know, So I just, of course, worried about what dads worry about. Everything's fine, I remember one time, Corey came home with a couple of gals, and they come racing up our driveway in a car, not ours, and right behind them were a couple of guys, and then they raced in right behind them. Dad, help me, they're yelling, Dad, help me. And I was in the house. So I come out, I'm ready to smack somebody. And the kid in the car, the guy says, "Hey, mister, your daughter's giving us the finger." I kid you not. Now I don't know what to do. Where do you go now? So anyways, we've had some times like that. And they never really got in any trouble at all, but they did what kids do, and that was that. And so we've just had a complete, and then health-wise, we've really been blessed, We've really been blessed. And we thanks to MaryAnn, really, we stayed Catholic. I say that because the girls kind of have taken their own religion and their own spiritual life. And they're doing fine, thank you. They're doing just swell. And Mary and I are involved in our Catholic church, and we're doing well. So it's a good thing. In fact, I sang in the choir, and I finally hooked in. I finally got it a little bit. So I became a spiritual guy, a little bit different than 40 years ago or so. It's tough because I always think that I should have done a lot more because I was gifted so much, and I just went along with the flow. I guess what I'm most proud of is providing for my family. We lived well. We did things well. We had that cabin. We went to Mexico or whatever it was, the trips and one thing and another. But the kids had a good life. We had a good life. Mary and I traveled a lot as far as we both enjoyed fishing and things, so we'd go from the Keys in Florida up to the farthest road up in Canada, up in there where the polar bears are. We had a little camper that we drove around, and a boat. And so we had a great life, and I have to say I'm generalizing a bit, but just being able to provide and doing it, how, why? Did I put a lot of effort in something? No, I didn't. Never did really do that. But I just provided, and I always had a job, got a job, and that was great, These good things, what I did, whatever they were, I provided for, and I continued to provide for. How and why, really, I truthfully don't know. But I never went to the top, never made the 6 figures more than a few years because I had to have a good time. And of course, when I got out of ball, I felt sorry for myself it amounted to about 15 years, a long time, 15 years. So I jumped into drinking, And what's better than going to a bar where they all know you, and you're still old compadres, and they're buddies, and you throw down the drinks. So I did that for about 15 years, and a friend of mine told me I should try, or shouldn't try, but I should go into treatment for alcoholism. Well, I never thought about alcoholism, I never thought about AA, I never thought about any of those things other than drinking and having a good time, or drinking and not having a good time. I mean, there was a time when I was drinking and I came home, and as worthless as I felt then, see, I'm a lot better now, but as worthless as I felt then, I took a whole bottle of pills and tried to kill myself. Ended up in the hospital didn't know where I was. MaryAnn, of course, had to call the hospital, call the ambulance. What a horrible, horrible situation, which I knew nothing of. I just drank a bottle of vodka and took a bottle of pills, because I wanted to end it. And that was not a selfish thing in my mind. In my mind it wasn't, because I wanted to get out of their lives and they could have a better life, because I was screwing up plenty good. And I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And that was the best way I knew how. It's like you get to a place where I'm not worth it, and you get the hell out of the way. That's where I was, you know. It's tough to shake, but you do. You can. And so that's about the bottom line. I mean, when you get that low, and I was, that's something. Well, I went into treatment, that's what I want to talk about, because I was pretty damn low. I went into treatment. I was there 6 weeks. MaryAnn, after a week, had read all the books. She came in and said, "Oh, we'll take care of this now." And she didn't want other people involved in our lives, or my life, our lives, whatever. And I just heard her say a whole bunch of crap that I heard in treatment, you know. I said, "Oh, no, just get out of here." So I'm in treatment, I'm in the hospital. And there's really some tough stuff that goes on in these treatments where they, what do you call that word, where they challenge you and so forth and so on, try to bring out the worst, because that's what it's about. Anyways, she came back to talk to the doctor, and the doctor pretty well told her she didn't know or asked from a nickel. She didn't know what she was talking about. And you know what she did? This was her decision. She went into treatment with me for 2 weeks. Is that a bit of love? I'll tell you. So, I mean, I had nothing to do, nothing to say, nothing. She was in treatment with 2 weeks and went through the whole thing. And back then I was so confused and so everything. But anyways, we grew together is where I guess I'm going. And we grew together, and I got out of treatment, and I recognized what was going on in the world, and more importantly, I guess what was going on with me, and I could shape up and do things. So that was an important part of my life, but certainly an important part of those pretty little girls, and surely an important part of my wife, because she's still here with me. Hello, after 50, 60 years, you know. We just had our ups and downs. It wasn't all sailing, cruising. But the drinking thing I wanted to, I guess, include, because a lot of people do that, and it comes from feeling sorry for yourself, you know. I mean, you can give it a lot of excuses, and you can say this and that, and I'm hurting, and they dumped on me, or they did this, or it shouldn't happen. But what I was doing was just sitting there feeling sorry, because I should be on top of the world, you know, and I wasn't. Actually, I never have been. But I've done a good job, and I've made a good living, and all this other good stuff that has come to pass that I don't give a damn about. But we've lived well. And so it went through treatment. Never had a drink since 1975. Now that's when that happened. Can't forget my dry date, May 13th, 1975. Thank you very much. But no, it wasn't a huge effort. It wasn't a huge drain or anything on me, because I had that family you've been asking about. I did. And then I was just blessed with having about 3 or 4 guys that went through treatment at the same time I did in the same year. And we weren't that tight or close. But since then, since 75, they've been the closest friends I've ever had. I lost 2 of them this year now. They died, but and I really miss them. But we've all been dry. We've all gotten out, you know, got in the program and stayed there. So that's probably enough of that, but that's the sour part. It had me to grow up. That's all part of that. But I couldn't accept failure, and I couldn't accept not doing what I thought I should do. My mother was just so healthy, and she was up at 5:36 every day, and she wrote in her diary every day. And my dad called one morning and said, "I can't wake up Mother." She was on the floor, you know, she had a stroke. And my dad was very sick. He was getting dialysis and all kinds of stuff. He was a sick guy. So we got my mom to the hospital, and it didn't work, of course. And so in the first part of October of that year, I think it was 81, but she died, and then he was crushed. And we had him out to our house. We were able to put him in his own bedroom, so he would be comfortable, but he couldn't be comfortable. And we had our girls, and we had a dog, and we had all kinds of good stuff. Thought we could bring him back a little bit, but that did not work. And he decided, this is a God thing too. He decided he just wanted to be with Mom. He didn't want to hang around. And so we went to the hospital. We had this meeting with the doctors around the table, and they said, well, we can do that if that's what Gordon Sr., my dad, wants to do. And so they pulled the plug, but they waited so our middle daughter, Terry, could come home from the university in Duluth, Minnesota. So we waited for that. Well, they thought it would take 3-4 days because they had the dialysis and so forth to build up, and then he'd comfortably pass away. But the same day, they had to bring him back because he was so ready to go. So it was so peaceful and so wonderful. I gotta say, great experience, because you gotta lose your parents, you gotta lose loved ones. But, I was there talking to him, like I said, and it was just a terrific thing. So Terry got back, obviously, on the bus right away, and so he died the next day. And so he died at the end of October. My mom died at the beginning of October of 81. So on the flip side, I had a long time with them, and I had a great time with them. And I never had any bad, hard spats with them. In fact, my wife, MaryAnn, when we were going together through these grades of 10, 11, and 12, for sure, she'd come over to the house and visit with my mom all the time and have iced tea and all that good stuff. And that was, when we were little kids, literally, I think it says a lot as to what I think and how I lived with my parents and the experiences I had. Because when we came down here, our folks had died, both our parents, and we just thought we'd come down to Florida. I was doing a real estate deal, and the motives were us coming here, so we thought, well, we'll come down there and check it out anyways, and this would be a good time to go to Florida if we're going to go to Florida. And so we did that, but then Corey was over in Fort Lauderdale, and she was in this modeling thing, and we went over there and visited and actually kind of checked out the East Coast. Didn't like it, but we did have some friends over here. So anyways, that's how we ended up in Naples. Well, then don't you know, Corey came up and stayed with us. And the short story is, she's been with us ever since. And she's been such a blessing. The other girls have been close. But Corey has been right there all the time with her girls, with her kids. Like her first baby she had out east, and MaryAnn went out there, And here, Corey lived with us for a while. And then she married Barry, her husband now. And that's over 25 years, and they have 3 kids. The last 2 years have been awful for me, and of course for the family because of health. And so, like for instance, when I was in Texas getting this operation, and they didn't think maybe I'd make it. It was kind of a tight deal. Corey flew right down there. She was with MaryAnn, and well, there was 3 times I had this, what they call code blue, where you level out. And they're there with this thing coming over the microphone, over the loudspeaker. Code blue, room 313. So their dad, their mom, their husband are dead, And just as bad as it is, now I'm not aware of that. Again, I slept through everything. I was in a coma for several months. I was in ICU for over 2 months. Anyways, Corey was there. And then when we got back, Corey and the kids were out at the airport to meet us. And that was a rough trip, but we made it back from Texas to Naples. And then ever since, she's been right there for us, and I mean really tight. And it's even possible that this thing that we're in right now, this situation where we sold our place, our house, and we had a nice villa, and then we're over here in an apartment, but we're planning on going in a beautiful new condo, and it has this continued living and so forth, which will be a terrific situation for both Mary and I, especially I think for MaryAnn. But that'll be a good deal for them. And I don't know at all, that Corey had something to do with that because of all her relationships. I mean, she knows everybody around. She's just that kind of person, And she loves it when we go out to lunch and I say, "This is my wife, Corey." And, she thinks that's really funny. Well, it gets kind of old too, doesn't it? But no, she thinks that's terrific, and wasters will look and say, "Oh, really?" And I'll let her correct it. But we have been super close, and I gotta say, this would be really the end of the tune. That she and my wife they're the two best friends between them. MaryAnn thinks Corey is her best friend, and because they enjoy each other that much. So she has really been a godsend to us. She has 3 children. Her first kid was a girl. I think I mentioned earlier, but she was born up where Barry lives, out east in Massachusetts or someplace. And Mary went up there, and she had the baby, and that's Christy. And so that was like 25 years ago, very close, plus or minus. And then she was back in Naples, of course. And then she had her second child, which was Hannah, another girl. And she's a beautiful little girl that we were all there, fortunate enough to be there when the baby was born. And of course, Corey being Corey, she had like grandstands built. I mean, literally, she had us all in the room. I wanted out of there, man. Get me out of here, But no, Dad, just stand there. Well, I'm trying to, I don't need this, Corey. I'll check it out later. Anyways, we had that experience, and that was funny. She even had a laugh between pains. And she had Hannah. And then her son is Matthew, and he's a great kid and a good athlete, darn good athlete. And I guess I just feel bad that he doesn't play sports because he was playing sports, and he played football, and he got a concussion, which, way back when we called dings, didn't have, but now they call them concussions. And, I guess they are. I mean, I can't battle that, can't refute that. So Matt instead he works out about 3 times a week. He's got a huge, beautiful body on him. And he's working, doing a job. And so he's very close at home. And he's working on his body. I mean, I don't know where the heck's he going to do with it, but I wish he'd decide to do something with the thing, because he really is got a great body on him now. And so that's Corey, and she's been always out front, She sells advertising in that now. And she had been selling for a radio. And she always was good for 6 or 7 years. Then she was down the road. That's Corey. She changed. I think Barry was first out of the box. But they got involved with religion and with a church. And I thought, well, that's fine, and then they'll be down the road. I didn't know the church or the guy. Well, I met them, and my wife and I went there a few times, and it was a nice get-together. And then it kind of changed, and it got to be big. They got a big church out there and so forth. So we did not get involved in that, and they changed. I think they maybe changed twice now, but whatever the case, they're very spiritual. The Lord is very important to them. They've had Bible study, I know, because they know a lot more than I do about the good Lord and the story. But Barry is very much a part of leading the family in religion and so forth. And so he's a great son-in-law, you know. He's got to do a few problems, but he just overcomes them. He's just a great guy. And so I'm touching very lightly on religion or in spiritual, but it's become a big part of our life. It really has. And I'm kind of angry right now because I can't go to church. They doggone it, I can't. You know, we go to this Catholic church, and that's important to me, but I got to walk up this driveway and so forth. And I don't want to fall into the Mass, you know, literally. So, anyways, Mary goes, of course, and it's a big part of our life, and it is, but I got to say, probably Corey and Barry were part of that, bringing us closer to the Lord, you know. That's difficult for a couple reasons. One is I'm not that smart, and I'd like whatever I say to probably go away. But part of what I went through here and talked about is the part where you have to get a hold of yourself. You have to be proud of yourself to some degree, anyways. And keep that pride and keep that strength, because if you lose it and if you feel sorry for yourself, which we all tend to do, I guess, once in a while, but you gotta face up to it. And then once you do that and you look for what you're doing and how it impacts other people, that's all it is. I know that's where my life led, and that's where I am today. What we have will take care of us, and we won't be a burden on people. And to answer your question, if you can just take care of yourself and you know, and be proud of what you have and the people around you, and there's some stuff you probably blew, or I know all of us have screwed up somewhere, but what I can impart is that you got to keep your head up and don't feel sorry for yourself. And don't get into the sauce or into something that's going to change your life. You know, you got a family or not. If you're lucky enough, blessed enough to have a family, then you made that decision and then you stay with it. I was proud of the fact that we moved forward, that we had a beautiful home. I mean, this is material stuff now, and that's why I back away from it. But we had a gorgeous home up in Minnetonka, Minnesota, where we had a hot tub in our patio and in our whatever outside room, and it just had a whole lot of nice things. I always was important to have a nice car, so I drove Cadillacs and I drove whatever, big cars, and that was important to me, you know. But back then I'm talking about. But what am I proud of? That I lived life high enough, and I didn't overstretch it. I know I can back into something. I never hurt anybody. I'm really a good friend. And I have a lot of good friends out there. And that opened the door there for me. If I'm proud of one thing, it's that I never screwed anybody over. And again, I have friends and I have friends and I have friends. That's I think the most important part. I have a family, hello. And you know, what else do you need? What else do you really want? And you know, what is important? Well, I was able to make a living. I guess that's what I started out to say, but that's not important. The important part is people out there trust me. And there are a lot of people out there that I will say love me. I mean, they do. I never would have accepted that or recognized it. But they really, this last couple of years when I've had failing health, you know, I've had so many people that are praying for me and that have me in their hearts. So, boy, oh boy, I'm glad I walked into this, because that is the most important thing in my life right now, is that I have friends. That I have friends and I have family. And the heck with the rest, and I kiddingly thought, the heck with the big cars and this and that and whatever. We got along, and here I am, okay, I'm okay with the good Lord too. If He's ready for me, then I'm ready for Him, So that sounds sad, but it isn't. It really isn't. I'm okay with myself. She had this black bangs and the short hair, and she was really beautiful in high school. And she had that figure skater body. Hello, I'm talking about all the stuff that isn't important. But I fell in love with her, and it was, I did. Of course, we didn't talk about that then, but I did. And in fact, the unfortunate part about that whole relationship was she never let me get too close. So, so I could only do so much, get so close, and it's a good Catholic girl stayed a good Catholic girl, So that's just an aside there, but no, she's always been there for me. I don't even have to say anymore. She's always been there for me. Just this last year and a half, I referred to it, but this last couple of years, she's been there. She's gone through hell. She's gone through hell. And she's always been there. And now she carries a big stick, I'll tell you that. I better do what she says or I'm out the door. And but she knows, that's another thing I'm proud of. She knows what she means to me. And she's meant this, whether it be 5 years or 10 years or 50 years. You believe 50 years and 60 years? 60 years ago. I don't believe that number, but it's true. And we went together through high school and all the stuff I talked, but we had a wonderful life together, and I never needed anybody else. So when I look back to say friends, I had a lot of good buddies I went hunting with and bangity bang and fishing, whatever, Vegas. So I had kind of a life, but never any kind of life without her. She's always been there for me, and I don't know. There's no other person around that I would even come close to. There's no other person, and I can say this to the camera or to Laura or whatever. I've never had a relationship with another woman other than MaryAnn. I never wanted to have a relationship because I didn't want to screw it up. I guess that's a big thing. I've come back to being a little selfish, but I didn't want to screw it up. And so we've had a terrific life in the home, on the road. We had a lot of experiences with the baseball and the traveling and moving the kids and being around. And so I know for sure I can end. I just wouldn't be here without her. And she knows that, and that's what I'm happy about too.